Big 12 or go home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by Iowa broadcasting legend Drew Russell. Drew Russell, it's early summer in the Heartland. How's it going
Oh,
up north?
and the vibes are elite, Braden Shanahan. Now, as you know, you're an Omaha guy, and Des Moines and Omaha have a lot of similarities. Honest to
Mhm.
God, I mean, a lot of similarities. And weather is one of them. And oftentimes, this time of year, you might be getting low 90s, and it will hit low 90s later this week. But on Monday of this week, and pod will go out when it goes out, 75, sunny, not a cloud in the sky, air, just a light breeze. Boy, it just makes it all worth it, Brandon. Every single negative day in the winter, you just cherish this. Everything is greener than green because we've gotten a decent amount of rain over the spring, and it looks incredible. I must say, Brandon, it is the vibes are incredible. When you think about you know summers in Iowa, this is what you think of. Admittingly, yeah, small town Iowa, big town Iowa, which Des Moines not that big, but you know you can't be beat.
At night, what does it get down to?
I think right now, I think it got down to high 50s last night. I had windows.
Oh,
I had windows open. I had a nice little breeze come in.
that's elite. That's Christmas
It's so
weather.
like when you're sleeping, I always say when it comes to having the windows open, I think if it's below 50, it's too much for me. It's too cold. Like if you have a decent amount of wind coming in, maybe 45. Because
Yeah,
I like cold.
maybe like crack it.
I could
Maybe a good
crack
window
it.
crack.
I could
Yeah,
crack it down to like even 40.
yeah.
Yeah, I could crack it down. Now, if I'm talking like I'm open half the window, let's say I'm opening half the
Right.
window. I'm gonna go 52. 52
That's
and 52 to like 62, 3. Because I can get a nice little blanket on, a nice little like cover, and I get fresh air. See, I want that fresh air coming in.
fresh air is huge.
It's major. Like my parents own a farmhouse, little land up in Minnesota. And when you get a night where it's 52, 62, not a neighbor within quarter mile, half a mile,
That's
and
elite.
it's pretty good until the hog house smell comes in. But that only happens here and there. That's only if the wind is going one direction. Hopefully, it's not going that way. Hopefully, it's going any other way. So, but no, like if you're cracking open a window, I'm with you. I could probably go down to 40, but I haven't done an
Yeah.
official check on that. But yeah, like if you get about 52 to 62, get a
Oh,
little breeze in
that's
there. I
great.
mean, you wake up at 6 a.m., you feel like you can do near anything. You really
Yeah.
can.
Oh man, that's good as get, especially when you get out and about. Because the one drawback is that like apartment living, like you can sometimes hear some ruckus going on outside.
Yeah.
But if you can survive that, or in a spot where you don't have to deal with the noise, oh my God, that's the best way to live.
Well, and I think that's a great point. Like, I live in the suburbs of Des Moines, and it's quiet. I'm gonna put it bluntly,
Yeah,
Brandon. It's very, very quiet. So, like, I can do this, and like, maybe there is a little ruckus on a Friday, Saturday night. Usually, not even that bad, but there is sometimes. But from Sunday through Thursday, I'm golden. I'm golden like Pony Boy. Like, it really is that simple. I can crank it up. I mean, I'm on the low level. I'm not saying there isn't crime that exists, but I feel pretty comfortable that nothing. I mean, I've actually left my keys in the door outside like twice when I first moved up here, and nobody stole anything. They could have. They could have just walked in. They could have opened my garage door, stolen my car. I would have had no one to blame but myself. But
yeah, that's a
that
tough
was
call
pretty
to make.
stupid.
It's a tough call to make.
Yeah, I never lived on my own at the time. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
over
that's
5 years
tough.
ago, and I was like, how the heck am I going to make it? But I did. I guess I survived somehow.
Well, not that we exactly get to celebrate this as adults with jobs, but summer vacation. So of course the kids are finally getting their final report cards last week. We started to give our grades for
Mhm.
the Big 12 schools and how they did basketball season, football season. So we did the Western Coast schools. Today we'll focus in on a kind of what I would call like the newer
Mhm.
bloods of the Big 12, as you can kind of see those grades there. Arizona getting the better of the grades. Colorado also getting the B plus. Utah, Arizona State, so. But today we'll focus on TCU, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, and then next week we'll wrap it up with the Big Eight schools
Oh
who've
yeah.
survived who survived Texas really when it comes
Mhm.
down to it. These teams were either came with Texas or were already here, and they survived it when Nebraska, Missouri, and Colorado bolted, and now they survived when Texas and Oklahoma abandoned ship starting this year. So lots of good stuff here. But as we kind of look at the grades we gave last week, any last minute changes, any thing that you'd like to circle back to?
Yeah, I mean, let's just quickly break down what we did say last week. We graded 5 schools: Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, BYU. Those first 4 are joining the Big 12 coming up within the month, July. They're officially members, and then BYU, a new member for last year. So these are all very new schools to the conference, brand new or just recently joined. Brandon and I had very good grades. I think very good analysis breaking down these schools. Arizona as a team average, and for those who might not know, we took a look at, we graded just this last season the football program, the basketball program for men, and then the overall outlook. And the outlook is for the program moving forward. And what does that look like? And we graded Arizona B, Arizona State D, Colorado B plus, Utah C, and BYU B minus. And those were the average grades based off of Brandon's thoughts, my thoughts for, again, last season's football, last season's men's basketball, and then the overall outlook of the program. So that's how it's gone down. And rereading those grades, Brandon, I still like where we were at last week. I think we kind of, people can disagree. I'm open to debate. Brandon and I, not to steal something from PMT, but embrace debate. Like we would definitely look at that. But I do like our grades overall, and I think you'd have to agree. I think you would be on the same page.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I mean, the one that kind of stands out is the D we gave Arizona State. But I feel like if we had an Arizona State fan on there and we show them this grade, we voted them pretty high on football. I think we both like where they're heading with Coach Dillingham. But the men's basketball team really what not a whole lot to scoff at, and I would be hard pressed to find an Arizona State fan who has much pushback to that.
Yeah. And quick sidebar, Brandon, I have to. Bobby Hurley coaches Arizona State. His brother Dan just turned down a giant offer from the Lakers and staying at UConn, which to me is a big deal. This
That's a
man
huge
turned
deal.
down Kentucky and the Lakers in one off season just to stay in Stores, Connecticut.
I
And
mean,
I know
that's
that
it,
has
right?
nothing to do
There's
with the
no
Big 12,
other there's
but
no other job that he would consider taking, right?
I mean, he got a big offer. That was an 8-figure a year offer from the Lakers. And
Yeah,
it might have just all been a ploy to get UConn to shell out even more money, which frankly, he has earned it if the free
yeah.
market is dictating it. But man, I don't blame him on Kentucky. There is just no that job.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'd be too scared. But turning down the Lakers would not be easy.
yeah. That's
NBA coaching, that's a different animal. But and he might have faltered and lost. He could have lost his job in a couple of years. That happens so often. Like John Beilein is one of the best coaches I've ever seen. Former West Virginia coach, and he's more known at Michigan. And he went to a couple national title games with Michigan, well respected. He got hired by the Cleveland Cavaliers, 5 years, $40 million. He got fired after 40 games.
yeah,
Granted, pocketed 40 million, so maybe he just doesn't care. But still, that was a tough blow for a guy who had succeeded literally his entire career, and then goes to the NBA and good, gone, gonzo, bon voyage. So.
well, it's a win for college basketball. I also saw a tweet of some dude dunking on college sports. He's like, "Yeah, I mean, this is what happens with NIL and the transfer portal. It's all these coaches are going to be leaving. John Harbaugh left for the Chargers. Hurley's now going to Lakers. Shut up. It's fine. It's always been like this to an extent, right?
I think for the older coaches, maybe he's got a point. Maybe I could listen to it. But
then
this
I
is
think
a world, Brandon. You have to look. We both work our various jobs. You just have to always adapt nonstop. The biggest lie, I think, in my opinion, is you graduate college. I remember graduating college. You remember graduating college. It's you're thinking, oh, I don't have to learn again. This is how it's always going to be, what they taught me. That's what I thought for a couple months. Oh, I know it all. I'm unbeatable. You go work in the real world and like, I don't know jack.
Yeah, none of that mattered.
None
Oddly
of it
enough,
mattered.
none of
Like
it mattered.
it really doesn't. Like, hey, if you're a student, it's important to get good grades. I'm not trying to say anything else, but like after that first job, they're not going to give one bleep. I'm
Yeah,
just going to tell you right now. Like they don't care. At least media. Maybe they do in other jobs, Brandon, but I don't even get the feeling after like if you work in finance after that first job, they don't care. They're like, well, what'd you do at your last job?
yeah. I think
So
it's a fair assessment.
but anyway, but geez, I need to stop going down these sidebars, Brandon. I'm having too much fun. But no, the college sports thing, like coaches are going to adapt. I mean, they don't have a choice, and they're making a lot of money as well. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of work. There's a ton of responsibilities, but there are thousands of people. Clearly, anybody who works college athletics, you see all these grad assistants and people doing unpaid deals as kids, and we're living in a lot of people in an apartment. They all want to be the head honcho, Brandon. That's the goal for many of them. So, like, no, like maybe for some of these older guys, maybe a Coach K who had coached since the early 80s. Like, okay, I could see that. Nick Saban, hey, oh, he doesn't want to do it anymore. Guy's 71. The guy went all out for literally 20 years trying to make it at Alabama. Maybe he just wants to sit at his lake house. Is that a crime? I don't think it is. So that's ridiculous. I'll rip it, and I'm happy to debate it anytime.
Yeah, it was a different world when like money was different, but like these college coaches are getting paid as much as pro coaches are,
I
and
mean,
so
you get one college job, Brandon. You're set for life from a
yeah,
family generational wealth standpoint. Honestly,
yeah. I mean we're really splitting hairs at that point. So I mean back in like the Jimmy Johnson era, I can see that being an issue.
yeah,
Now it is what it is, and then I don't know. And now granted, uh, there might be some bias here, but with Matt Rule, the way that he talks about his time in the NFL compared to like what he enjoys doing is like this is absolutely where I want to be. Now, granted, he might be saying that because he got fired from the NFL. Quick sidebar to the sidebar: the Panthers were worse after he left, so I just want to throw that out there.
facts. Agreed.
But then, I mean, there's a lot more to it, and to have that kind of control over your team, especially now with roster management and getting to develop these folks, that's a whole different world.
Completely different world. There's just so many facets of it, and again, it might be harder more than ever to be a college coach, but you could also make an argument it's easier than ever. Like if you have big donors, you don't have to be a traditional
Yeah,
power. You can just show up to a random school if they've got bank accounts and you can know how to recruit a 17, 18-year-old and say your life's going to be better coming here. You have a shot. Like you really do. So you could flip the pancake and look at from a different perspective as well. So I'm not saying it's easy, and the NIL stuff is. Gee, we've spent hours on this show
yeah.
debating it, and we'll have hours more of content. That's guaranteed. But there are some real positives from a coaching standpoint as well, and I think you have to look at it with that glass half full instead of the glass half empty.
You're absolutely right, and we could talk about this all day, and I'm sure we will talk about this all day at some point. But we got some
Yeah,
grades
we
to
do.
give out.
Yeah, sorry not to go on like just a. I love the side quest of any. I don't even
I
play
love.
video
Oh,
games, but you gotta
it's
go
so good.
side quest, right? You gotta get through those to get to the
Got
main
to get
portion.
the 100% completion on all the side missions. Oh man, I love it.
Yeah, you live for it. You do. It's like NFL mini camp for Madden when I was a kid. I had to
Oh
play
man.
it. Had to get those rings, baby. Had to get them.
But speaking of rings, TCU they got a Fiesta Bowl ring not too long ago, and then
Mhm.
a glorious 5-7 season here. I think as we kind of recap TCU season, I feel like this one is and as somebody who really hopped on the Hypno Toad train in that glorious run to the national championship, uh, I expected certainly a step back. And I think in my previous series that I did last year, the big phrase that I kept going to, like, this is going to be the floor of the TCU program under Sonny Dykes. Like, whatever happens this year is going to be the worst that they're going to be, ideally, hopefully, I think. Granted, I didn't think it would be 5-7. I didn't think it would be them giving up 700 yards to Colorado, who won one football game the previous season at home in Fort Worth. But let me see here. So we got 1 to 40. I'm going to give this one a 25. I don't think they had a very good football season at all.
Yeah, this is a very interesting grade, Brandon, because they overachieved so much in year one. Like, if we had done the same deal last year, Brandon, despite that national championship game, I would have given them a 39, maybe even a 40,
I would have given them a
despite.
45. I mean, that's outstanding.
I mean, seriously, I probably, despite the beyond embarrassment of that game, like, I'm like, what they put together was crazy. They had some like crazy moments during that season, like that field goal, like last second against Baylor was
Oh my
stupid crazy.
God.
Like that was it. I was like, they're not going to even get the kickoff. They do with like 2 seconds left.
I
They
could
got
not
it.
believe they made that.
Absolute nails. I was convinced they're going to miss it. But look, I think you and I were both expecting a step back. There was no question. We have to be realistic.
Yeah.
You lose just big talent from that team from a year before. But this was heavily disappointing this year. To not make a bowl game, I was not expecting. There's no other way to put it. So you got 25. I've got to go an F. So I got to go. I'll show respect to Sonny Dykes because I still think he's doing a good job, and it seems to run a clean program. But I got to give our lowest score so far 20. I got 20.
20. Oh, that's tough.
And I don't feel good doing that, Brandon, because I think obviously TCU fans, I wish there were a few more of them, but they are a solid fan base. Fort Worth is, you're aware of the area, nice town, good, good people. But it was disappointing. And you lose a Heisman guy as well. That should not be overlooked. I don't know. I feel bad, Brandon, but it has to be done. I don't care. You can't make a national championship game. What's wild is too bad it wasn't just flipped. They should have just went 5-7 year one under Dykes. Maybe a little unnerving and, is this the right guy? And then if they have that season this year, they were saying TCU's the clear power going into this new Big 12. It was too bad their timing you don't change that season for anything, but you low-key kind of wish it was like flopped a little bit somehow.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. And there's clearly some juice because you also got to remember it's not like this team was just on the precipice. In the last year, Gary Patterson. There's a reason why he's not the coach anymore. Somebody who's as accomplished and as beloved, who literally has a statue outside the stadium. When you do that for an active coach, that's just an insane amount of respect. And for them to decide to move on from him, you know that things weren't going well. Then to take that team and really, I mean, that's you get to the forefront. They're the only Big 12 team to win a college football playoff game, including Oklahoma and Texas. They're the only before Texas's run last year, the only team in the state of Texas to make the college football playoffs. That's Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech. I mean, just an insane run. And even there was a lot of close, weird, fluky games. I felt like that Baylor game. Kansas State at one point in their first game had to go to QB3 in Fort Worth. But even if a couple of those games go the other way, you're still looking at 9-10 wins. That's still an outstanding season. That's still an A season.
Yes.
And then to take the step back last year, not great. And I think I would feel a lot better if they would have just gotten to a bowl game. And
agreed.
I also remember the most prominent game on their schedule that you probably remember the most is that Colorado game, which stinks.
It was such a defining game to start the season because it had a national TV audience because of Deion. And it did help that they were the defending national runner-up. So there was real interest of what's going to happen in that game. And admittingly, you and you have the archives. If we really had to dig in, maybe we'll do it for next time or whenever. But I have no doubt we picked TCU, both of us, in that game.
Easily.
I
didn't even think twice about it.
Me neither. I thought, well, I mean, they've got good positive pubs. So when Sanders goes off and they're putting up numbers, I'm thinking, I think it was more. I thought, man, Colorado might do something serious. I didn't really think too much that TCU's going to have a losing season. I really didn't at the time. I thought, they'll bounce back. I wasn't that concerned with them. So yeah, 5-7 mark was rather stunning. And many games they weren't that competitive in either. Some they were and just fell short, but a couple you're like, man, they could have been a little more competitive. So that's why I got 20. I'm almost talking myself almost into the high teens, but I'm going to stick with 20 and move from there.
The men's basketball, a weird season.
Yes.
And I feel like when we get towards the middle of this conference, that's kind of the word for a lot of these schools, just weird. I mean, they start off insanely hot. They start off winning 10 of their first 12 games.
Yep.
They gave Kansas a run in Lawrence, gave Iowa State a couple of good runs, including just a 2-point loss later on in the season, and then just kind of fell apart late. Lost to BYU, lost to UCF, and just a rough draw in the tournament. Getting Houston. Where would you grade the Horned Frogs men's basketball season?
Yeah, this is a program that historically is not very good, Brandon. Jamie Dixon has done some wonders with them, and I know they haven't gone deep into an NCAA tournament. I know they've never won a conference regular season championship or a conference postseason championship under Coach Dixon. That doesn't take away he's doing a pretty freaking good job in Fort Worth. And when I look at that program, it's a tough place to win. They've put a lot of money into really a nice little arena they've got there that seems to get rather loud. I'd love to catch a game eventually there. So those are just positive things. The inconsistency, you're dead right, Brandon, was something that stood out to me on that team because there were days they looked untouchable and really could maybe be a heavy, deep tournament team at times. Even I really liked what they were able to bring. But then there were times like when they played Iowa State in Fort Worth that they had 28 turnovers, I think, in that game, 28 or 29, and they still only lost by one. Iowa State had to freaking cling tooth and nail to find a victory out of there that day. But in terms of grade, since I need to get to that eventually, I still think they had a good year. I don't think that takes away from that, Brandon. And I'm aware of the program history. I'm going to go 32. That should be a B minus. I don't think it was a bad year. I wish they were I wish they made second weekend of the tournament. And that was part of kind of an overall disappointing Big 12 tournament run, despite, I think, still being the best conference in the country. But they had some bad breaks. I mean, specifically Houston, when you lose, your top player to an injury, that really changed things. We'll get to Houston a little bit, but yeah, I'm gonna go 32.
32. I'll give them a few more points on just kind of the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that they really pride themselves on being a huge basketball school. So while their inconsistencies, sure, I had them probably come up short of where they hoped they'd be. I don't think it was. I think if you talk to TCU fans about like where they ended up, numbers wise, record wise, you tell them you compete with Kansas, you compete with Iowa State in a couple of weird games. I think they take that, and I think that's worth the B. So I'll give them a 34 even.
Yeah.
Again, real close. I mean, if you get just string together a couple more wins, we're probably looking A minus territory, B plus, even. Now, also, if a couple of those other games go wrong, then you're kind of looking the other way. But I feel like it's a fair spot from weird.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, Brandon, because they had some big wins. I had to make sure I was right. NCAA tournament, they just did not put up a good day. I mean, they lost by 16 to Utah State in the round of 64. Which for some reason I thought they made it to the round at 32. So that's my apologies. So, I mean, that was a disappointing showing just considering the stage of that to give up 88 to a pretty good Aggie team out of Logan, Utah. But it's a tough place to win. And Jamie Dixon's winning. Like before he got there, Brandon, they hadn't been to the NCAA tournament, I think, since the early 80s. Jamie Dixon was a point guard for them then. So that tells you everything you didn't know of how tough it's been. And the Big 12 is unforgiving. And they were horrible when they first got to the Big 12. I mean, it was like they looked like a low major college team compared to the rest when they first joined. But they've become competitive, and I give them a lot of credit in that regard.
Also, I appreciate the flex showing out to Utah. Would have never guessed Logan, Utah is a real place. So shout out to Russell, the geography expert
I don't
of
know
the
why.
show.
I'll tell you what,
But
Brandon. I need to go back onto Sporical like old
oh man, I
times,
love
and
a
I
good
need to
sport.
just find like a quiz from like every NCAA town, just see how many I can get because I do love those type of quizzes. I really do. So Power Four, I'd be good. I know I could get every one of those. I do know that.
That's a pretty big flex. That's a good one.
I feel good on that. I really do.
Let's see here. Looking ahead at the Horned Frogs, this one's tough because, like you'd said, with the football team, if it was flippity flop where they go 5-7, you're one under Dykes, and then go 12-0 and win a Fiesta Bowl, that's A+. That's through the roof. It even doesn't matter what basketball does. That's outstanding. But when you kind of pair those aside, I do think that the vibe's a little bit more optimistic. I think there's a lot of faith that Josh Hoover will be a little bit more than what Chandler Morris turned out to be at the quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
They're still recruiting pretty well, not at a crazy high level, but with certainly on par with the rest of the new Big 12 teams. So football, I feel pretty good about basketball. Like I said, I think they're heading in the right direction. I'll Let's see. Let me convert to my lucky chart here. So if I give them, well, that's on a 40. That's not going to help me out here. I'll give them a 17 on Outlook.
Yeah.
I think relatively positive stuff.
Yeah, I actually printed that was the exact number I was going to go with. We were on the same page, so I'm going to just copy your answer. I'm going to go 17 as well because I really do. I love what Coach Dykes is doing in general. When you replace Gary Patterson, who was huge for TCU football, is the reason they're in the Big 12. He made them a attractive enough candidate some 15 years ago when A&M and Colorado and Mizzou and Nebraska all left and the conference was kind of spiraling. Nobody knew, and they were a big addition at the time because they were coming off multiple Rose Bowl appearances with Andy Dalton, and Gary Patterson was major to that program, and it was tough to let him go. It was needed, but it was tough. And Coach Dykes, despite last year, I think still has him on the right track. And I still have just too much respect for Jamie Dixon. He had too many good years in Pittsburgh. And again, that's not an easy job at TCU. Maybe there's some randoms that think he can do more. You got to just keep letting him do what he does. And, we'll see in a couple of years if for some reason you would like a change, but I don't see any reason for that. So they're in good shape. I think basketball is going to be tougher just because that is an insanity show. Regarding the Big 12 and how fun that is. But football, they're in really good shape, and I think they could be a consistent top 5 team. And if they were conference champions, once again, within the next 3 years, at least regular season, potentially the actual title game, wouldn't even be remotely shocked.
Yeah, shout out TCU in that Rose Bowl. Unlike any of the new teams coming in, they actually win their Rose Bowl. So shout out Andy Dalton and the Horned Frogs there. Let's see here. West Virginia up next. We talk about college towns. Nobody does it better than Morgantown, West Virginia. I'll tell you what. But as we, if there was a vibe rating on this, especially for the football season, I mean, it's through the roof. It's Big 12 football at its finest. We came in. We're like, are they on the hot seat? Are they gonna, fall apart? Are they gonna be the worst team in the Big 12? And then there's a point where I'm like, there's a path for them to win the Big 12 championship. And then they lose to Houston on a weird Thursday night, Friday night game on a Hail Mary. Weird stuff. But, I mean, that's part of the deal of West Virginia.
Yep.
Overall, I feel like last season went pretty well towards expectations. I'll go ahead and give them a B+. Sign me up for a 35 for the Mountaineers. I think that's the kind of season that you don't harp on, like TCU with that national championship season. You can kind of live off that for a while. But I certainly don't think that this has any staying power. But like on a one-off year without much context, yeah, I'll give that a good B+.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Brandon, this podcast was real scared for our beloved Neil Brown. We for weeks like, how does Neil do it? Is he going to get the axe? It didn't look good at times. And our boy delivered, and our boy got himself a contract extension in one of America's most electric towns of Morgantown. And I'm giving him an A. Like, Seriously, because I mean they were
Yeah,
picked last in the conference. They come out as a 9-4 team. That's significant, and I don't know if it's going to translate to this year. I don't, but we're talking about last year. So for me personally, I'm going to go. I'm looking at our scores right now. Arizona's our highest at 38. Yeah, considering that this guy was going to get fired on anything less than probably a 6-6, maybe even 7-5 season, give me a freaking 38
let's go.
on West Virginia, because I think just despite the low expectations, like they put together some nice wins. They won games they were supposed to. They defended home field relatively well, and they've got interesting games coming up this fall. I feel bad I don't have the full schedule right in front of me right now, but what, Pittsburgh's in
A
town, I
lot
think
of
week
winnable
1.
games.
I mean, they're more winnable games. And I mean, Morgantown, I mean, is one of the most electric places in the country. And like, I'll tell you what, Brandon. All right, here you go. We're gonna go nuts today. I was talking to one of my good buddies from college, and he's got connections to West Virginia, which I had no idea until rather recently, Brandon. Iowa State plays in Morgantown mid-October, and I'd be full of it if I said I'm not looking. Brandon, could I go viral if I wore just an Iowa State hat and then wore a top 5 shirt in American history, which is Larry David choking Elmo? Because I'd like to think we could really create some juice in Morgan. I feel like I could match the vibe of Morgantown that day. I really believe
I think
that.
that's how you do it.
The riot bull would be crazy. I would burn a couch myself. I'll say it right now. I'd burn a couch myself. It's a great town. The fans love their university. It's beautiful country, and they deserve a good team. And I know geographically they haven't been a great fit for the Big 12. Let's just put that bluntly, but
A lot better fit today than they were when they joined. That's
facts. Bringing Cincinnati in was major. Even UCF, I think, is a needed just team as well, just from a Southern standpoint. So I like what they're doing. Let's give them credit where it's due.
So lots of good moments on the gridiron, not a lot of great moments on the basketball court. Ended up with a whopping 9 wins overall, just 4 in
Yeah.
conference. I was at an 8-game losing streak to wrap up the season. They did pick up wins against UCF. They picked up a win against Kansas,
Yeah.
which I mean that's Big 12 basketball at its finest.
Yeah.
But not a whole lot of highlights outside of that. Beat up on Cincinnati like everyone else did. How are you feeling about the Mountaineers on the hardwood?
Yeah, I mean, what a wild situation. Bob Huggins gets fired because of various comments made on a local Cincinnati radio show. And look, Huggy Bear, I think, is a deep down good guy. He's done a lot of good stuff for that community over the years, Brendan. So I'll start with the positives, but you can't say that stuff either. And I think it was a violent decision because he's a very popular man in that state. And he is a brand nationally. A guy from, anytime I hear somebody say, it's just how things were then. That usually means
Yeah.
there's some certain comments that are often made by those people that maybe aren't perfect. Whether you agree with them or not, whatever, I don't care. But they're going to make their takes. They're going to be boiling hot. That joyous show with Skip Bayless, that Nimrod. I'll tell you what, Brandon. Like, they went through a lot. They had an interim head coach. Players hurt, transferring is a disaster. So it has to be an F just because it was a 9-win season. That's tough to do in modern day college basketball. But I also give them a lot of credit for biting the bullet and do it. So I'm going to go 20 on their men's basketball season because, I mean, I do have to look it on court. I mean, we have for every other team. But I also think, despite all the greatness that Coach Huggins brought to that program, and I'm not going to go on a rant on him. I do have respect for him in many ways, not fully, but many ways. But I think they did build a potential something interesting. When we go to the outlook, they've got a very exciting new coach in that program, and I think they've got some real interesting stuff going forward.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't have much positives to add. You know what? Here's what I'll give them a 24, so the bottom of the scale in the D- section, just because they beat Kansas, and I'm sure as a West Virginia basketball fan, that moment in and of itself makes the whole season. Again, not everybody gets a letter up for beating Kansas because a lot of teams beat Kansas this year, But for West Virginia, after what they went through, I'll give it to them. I'll give it to them.
That was a pretty wild moment, though, because Kansas was really cruising at the time. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, another vintage KU team. And they go to West Virginia team. They couldn't win a game at the time. And weird things happen in Morgantown, Brandon Shanahan. That's just guaranteed.
And weird things will continue to happen in Morgantown as we take a look out. Football wise, this might be one of the more polarizing ones because football wise, I feel great about West Virginia. They bring back Garrett Green, who's kind of firmly in like that second tier of Big 12 quarterbacks. Like, of course, you got like Cam Rising, Shooter Sanders, Avery Johnson, and then you kind of got this long second tier of guys who could pop off at any moment. And if you told me that Garrett Green ends up being first team All Big 12 in the season, okay, maybe not first team, but like second team All Big 12, I could definitely buy into something like that. He was outstanding, 4-1 touchdown to interception ratio. They got a lot of good stuff brewing there. And then basketball, I certainly have my questions, and I think because of that, I'm gonna have to drop them down to a 31, or not a 31, an 11. Let's see, let's go fifth. Let's see,
You're at 20. You're at a 20.
Out of 20.
What's your
Let me
letter
go.
grade you want?
Oh man, C.
15 on the nose. That'd be a
15.
75.
All right. Yeah, give me that.
Talk to your numbers guy.
The
Drew Russell.
mathematician.
Rude Russell will take care of you. This is tough, Brandon,
It's tough.
because I actually feel the vice versa.
Really?
Football program, I think, has some good stuff going, but was that not a potential fluke? I can't believe I'm doing this because I just went on a nice little, like, Neil's our guy.
Yeah, just got a contract extension, bringing back one of the better quarterbacks.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, they do, again, I've said every team, so I'm going to try not to do it again, but there's the old Iowa slogan when you drive into the state of fields of opportunity. And there is in this new era Big 12. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Iowa got a new slogan in the state. It's trash. Fields of opportunity is what Drew always say. So we wasted $1 million there, but whatever. We move on. This is a family-friendly show. I want to say that, Brandon, that I don't know. Like, it's kind of interesting because, like, some of those wins, Big 12, I mean, they didn't, they didn't beat the heavy hitters. They did kind of eat in the schedule that they needed to eat in. Their schedule's not easy this year either, but there is also some winnable. I mean, it's a tough call. Basketball, on the other hand, I think they're going to be fine. They got right out of Des Moines, Drake University, Darian DeVries. That's a great hire. That's a great hire for them. And for them to get him, and then to get the top transfer in the portal in his son, Tucker DeVries, who's a built-in 20 points a night kid. I can't wait to watch him in the Big 12. He's going to be so fun. He's been a blast to watch in the Valley. I think West Virginia basketball will be fine. I think they can make the tournament again, even as early as year one. So this is a tough one. I'm going to go 16 because I have so much hype for the basketball program. And it's not like, and you know what? Neil. I'm all in on Neil Brown. Sorry, Neil. I didn't mean to doubt you. Yeah, let's go 16. I got a B score for them.
You know, I'll bump mine up to a 16. You talked me into it. I didn't realize their basketball team was cooking as well as they are. That's outstanding stuff. I mean, if you think that there's a chance they make the tournament, I mean, that's a huge. You feel.
I mean, look, Drake University, Brandon. You know Drake.
You know Drake.
I went to many games. They have Count On EMC and insurance there. We love Count On.
Yep.
Look, that's a tough place to win. And like when Coach DeVries took over, that program was not in complete shambles. It was the year before, but it was in pretty rough shape. They won an NCAA tournament game in 2021. That was the first time they won one in 50 years. They had made an NCAA tournament in like 13, and I think they'd only made like 1 or 2 in like 50 years. And what Coach DeVries did is make 4 straight NCAA tournaments. And they could have gone deeper in a couple of them, but they didn't play well. They didn't execute down the stretch. That is what it is. But that doesn't take away that Drake could really play. They took out America's sweetheart, Indiana State, in the Missouri Valley final with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So, like, I have full faith. And I mean, Coach DeVries had chances to go to other schools, I think, last couple years, and he turned them down, which was surprising. And I kind of thought he'd stay there for a while. In fact, I think Iowa fans were thinking if Fran retires, he'd be a logical candidate. And as painful as it was to admit, I thought, yeah, and he'd be a good one.
That'd be a bummer.
Yeah, I'd be mad, but like, I have a lot of respect for Coach DeVries. So, you know, I can't hate on him. But I'm happy he's going to West Virginia. It's a great get for the conference. It's a great get for West Virginia University. And it is a good get for him. Like, if he wins, that fan base will embrace him like crazy. So we'll find out. I'm going to go 16 because that's a great fan base. I'm hoping with the new additions and maybe a couple more geographically friendly teams that they can do some damage.
Moving on to Cincinnati, I got a hunch these are going to be some of my lowest scores. And a real tough draw, because I think going into the Big 12, you feel great. I mean, they made a college football playoff appearance. They've done such a great job developing talent in a non-power conference. Then Luke Fickell leaves and takes the Wisconsin job. So all that goes out the window. Football, boy, I gave them a lot of credit. I thought they were going to have the best season out of the new four schools. I got burned quite a bit, so I'm going to try to not let any animosity like that get after my grade here. I'll give them, let's see, I'll give them a 26, so a D, with a little, and that's with grace, considering this was their first year in the Big 12, but I mean, bad stuff all around.
Yeah, I mean, tough. They weren't competitive in multiple games, Brandon.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give them enough because I don't think it was, that Iowa State game, they were terrible. And Iowa State played well that day, but that was, I mean, I'll admit, at home they had a terrible showing. This is a really interesting situation for the Bearcats. Because I don't know what the future looks like for this program. We'll get to that in the outlook. But for the football season itself, a tough one. One where I felt like they had great momentum clearly. You lose Fickell. How do you build post-Fickell era? This guy had a heavy influence, kind of similar to Gary Patterson of why TCU's in the Big 12. I think Fickell had a major helpful run of hey, Cincinnati's an attractive candidate for expansion. Ohio's football crazy. No, it's not Ohio State, clearly, but you can make an argument that probably the second biggest program in the state for football. I might be missing somebody, Brandon, but I'll make an argument right now. It was disappointing. So I'm not going to go F, but I'll go close. I'll go 24. And I think, what is the future? Can they find QB play? Can they have lines that give a rip? I think that was one thing that stood out to me watching them a couple of games last year. Their lines looked like they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to fight for their guys. And I always think sometimes skill guys will quit. Sometimes QBs are misreading stuff or whatever. Defensively, maybe corners or linebackers. But I'm like, linemen usually fight. And when your linemen are quitting, that's not a good sign. So I'm going to go 24.
That's fair. And now looking at their basketball season, I don't feel much better. I mean, they went. Let's see here.
Yeah, they finished around because they went NIT.
Yeah, so they went 20-14, 7-11 in conference, which admittedly feels a little bit better. They went on a bit of a run there late, won 4 of their last 6, beat Kansas, beat a hobbled Kansas.
Yeah, they did.
So for that, I'll bump them up to a D plus, but I not actually that feels a bit harsh. I'll give them an even C. That's a tough league to come into, and they picked up some good wins. I think you can, you would have liked to have made the tournament, but there's enough good moments in there to go to sleep at night.
Cincinnati's tough because I'm old enough to remember the Big East of the thousands and early teens, Brandon, for basketball, and it was a freaking fun conference. And I know everybody always talks about how great the 80s were in the Big East, the 90s. I mean, I wasn't alive in the 80s. I was barely alive in the 90s. I don't really remember any of that era, but the thousands Big East and the early teens Big East was freaking amazing. And Cincinnati competed very well in that era. They won multiple conference championships in a loaded Big East. Mick Cronin was still a good coach. I still think, UCLA is a bizarre fit for that man, but whatever. He was good at Cincinnati. It's been fascinating to watch because that's a program that has a lot of pride. 20-win season's good. That's nothing wrong with that. I have higher expectations for that program, though. I just do. And I think that fan base does as well. No NCAA tournament. This is tough. I'm going to go, it is a 20-win year. I'll go 27. But, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you deserve, I think, hardwood more than anything. And they just renovated their arena. And it looks really good. So they should demand more. And Wes Miller's a good coach. Still a young guy. It feels like he's coached forever. He's still relatively young. But you have to win. And you have to make tourneys at Cincinnati. Certain schools, we'll talk UCF in a little bit. That's not necessarily an expectation as much. But at Cincinnati, I think it's a deserved expectation.
And then looking ahead, boy, I have a hunch that Satterfield is going to be a huge problem. So I have such a hard time feeling any bit of positivity with them whatsoever. So that's really weighing down my outlook here. Basketball, I feel like there's still a lot of potential. I feel like you could really talk yourself into some success. I feel like getting, when you're talking to players, like we're gonna be able to give you the opportunity to play against the best in the country, and with all the games on ESPN and ESPN Plus that the Big 12 offers, that's huge. And then you also typically get the benefit of the doubt come tournament time. I think that's enough. What would like a C minus be on a scale of 1 to 20?
C minus, that would be gotta think for a minute, Brandon. So if it's probably a 14 range, 15 to 75, so 14.
Yeah,
that's pretty close. 14. Yeah.
I have real bad feelings about where the football program is. I think they might even take a step back this year, which is tough to say.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, and I'm on that football program. Can basketball find a way, even with a more stacked conference, to find a way to swing through? Because I think they do have the fan base and support there. This is a tough situation for Cincinnati. I think our lowest score so far, Arizona State's an 11 for an outlook. I'm not going that low because I do have a little more hope just based on the fan base alone that cares. Cincinnati's a wild town, Brandon. I've never been to Cincinnati. But I hear that Skyline Chili will make you go nuts. Is based on what I'm hearing. So I don't know if I could eat a bowl of that stuff. Could you eat a bowl of that stuff?
Absolutely.
You would hammer it.
Eat some fresh Skyline Chili.
I'd be nervous. I'd be like, I feel like, so pretty much if I'm eating Skyline, Brandon, no line here, folks. 12 o'clock eat from 1 to like 8. I'm not leaving the hotel room.
Yeah, it's.
I got movies planned. I'm parked there on the bed all day because I'd be like, if I'm walking around or I got to go to a game, I'm like, this is going to come up eventually or down. Yeah. Hopefully not up. That'd be bad. That'd be really bad. But
wouldn't
down.
Put it past it.
No, I wouldn't either. I don't know how my stomach would handle it, but they got a good fan base. They care, but I'm with you. And for Scott, Satterfield, he's got to clean it up. And I mean, what a disappointing start last year. So I'm gonna go 13. Because if basketball can't get it together, Brandon, all of a sudden this program, if they, if say donors stop caring or if they lose money there, even though Big 12 is not as right now as heavy of a hitter as say the Big 10 or the SEC, let's just put that out there now, but they could fall behind real quick. I'm with you.
Let's see. And actually, I am going to bump my Arizona State grade up because I do feel better about Arizona. Well, I probably feel slightly worse about them basketball-wise, but I do feel better about them football-wise. So I'll give them a little bit of a bump there. Moving on to probably one of our more basketball-heavy brands here in Houston. It's a fun one. Football. Again, I think this is going to be a low grade and then a high outlook because I really like what they've done since then, but it's real tough. Well, and also, how do you weigh this? you had to fire your coach. That's
Yes.
that's a problem. That means you had a bad season. But I think they got a huge upgrade in a coach. So is that a net win?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that we'll look at that from an outlook standpoint. I think of just what they're able to do, similar to like West Virginia with
Yeah.
basketball. That's how I'll break it down.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and give them a D minus. I'll give them a 24 for football. That game against West Virginia was fun, but that was about it.
Yeah, that's a tough because it was an ugly football season, no question about it. Though you and I are on the same page. I'm like, but that West Virginia ending was crazy. Like that was so, but like that was one of the better college football endings I've ever seen. It's why TV networks pay unreal amounts of money for the rights to this stuff. Because I'm like, how can't even script this?
No.
Like it's ridiculous. But it was a disappointing football season. And for a program that's seen, I can say every single one of these about every one of the American teams that came to the Big 12 last year. When you look at that across the board in Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and I guess BYU too, though they weren't American. But those three specifically from the American brand, and they've all seen good success in the last decade. They've all had big seasons the last decade. And when you look at Houston, disappointing, but I do like the future of their program. But I'm with you. It wasn't a great year. I'm going to go 23 on their football because of that. I would have probably gone lower, but I can't get that stupid Hail Mary out of my mind. That was just so electric. So I'll
That
give
was
them the
great.
benefit of the doubt, even though it's pretty ugly at times.
Let's see here. For men's basketball, I'll just keep it simple. I think they had a really good regular season. I think, they'd like to get another run in the tournaments, but I think it's an A, especially going into to a new league.
Yep.
They're a win or two in March away from
Yep.
getting A plus. Give me an easy 38 for the Cougs.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Brandon, I'm going to give them a 39. Yes, I'm aware they got absolutely obliterated in front of a neutral site in Kansas City against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship, which was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. That's for sure.
There was no doubt about that. And I thought they got a brutal break in the NCAA tournament. You lose your first team All-American guy in Jamal Shed to a foot injury against Duke. They still could have won that game. They just didn't get it done. But they had a great year. I'm with you, Brandon, and I'm still tempted to go 40. I'll go 39 because I guess they fell short of a Final Four, which they've made. And but they won the regular season conference in the Big 12, the very first year of its existence in the Big 12. That is an incredible, incredible accomplishment. Even though a lot of people disagree with me, I will always take regular season championships a little more seriously than those postseason ones because those you get hot for a week. Regular season, you play great ball for 2+ months. And so for Houston, just a ton of credit. Calvin Sampson, whether you like him, whether you hate him, whatever, the guy can coach and the guy gets a team that's bought into his system. Ton of respect there from an Iowa State fan. They played 3 great games this year. I cannot believe we beat them twice. That is unbelievable by the Cyclones because that's a great Houston team, and they earned their 39. Great year.
Other than outlook, this might be one of my higher grades. I'm gonna go with 22.5. I'm gonna throw in some extra credit points here. I love Willie Fritz. I think it's such a great opportunity there football wise. You're in the heart of one of the biggest football meccas in the country in Houston, Texas. And in a world where now some of your biggest competitors, Texas A&M, they're taking their guys out east, and that's a little bit tougher for some of those 3-star guys when you get an opportunity to play in Fort Worth, when you get an opportunity to play in Stillwater still. So I think they could absolutely be among the thick of the things that come Big 12 here in the next couple of years. And then of course when you have Kevin Sampson, you're always going to be a championship team. So yeah, give me a good 22.5.
I didn't even know extra credit existed, Brent. I feel like we need a siren button on this show, woo, 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 or something like that. That's insane. I won't use my extra credit here. I'll withhold it. Maybe I'll burn it later. Who knows? I'm with you though. I have real high expectations for this program. Highest I've given so far for future is, believe on this. Actually, I think Arizona I gave an 18. I don't know if you can scroll that up quick, Brandon, on the chart. Oh, 15. Sorry,
Yeah.
Wildcats. Still a lot of respect there. Houston's the fourth largest media market in the country, Brandon. I think, and the Cougars, I think, have found a little bit of a foothold in that community, which is very impressive considering all the distractions. They have a football program that works. They've really invested in their facilities. They have heavy level donors. They could very easily rise out of this pile of ashes of football and do some great stuff. And from a basketball standpoint, I mean, they're playing with Kansas right now, which is really impressive. And Kansas, I know, had a down year. They'll be back, of course. Conference is loaded, though. And right now, they're the king of the hill of it. And you have to just salute that. So I'm going to go in 18. I think an A- is a fair take for them. I really like the position they're in. Obviously, Willie Fritz got to go prove himself, right, Brandon?
Yeah.
That also, like, not blind of what happened last season, kind of the downfall the last couple of years under Holgerson, but doesn't mean that they aren't doing some good stuff. So that's my score there.
And now our final ones of the new bloods here. UCF had a fun football schedule. They had that crazy blown game against Baylor, if you remember. They beat up on Cincinnati, and they rolled Oklahoma State when we thought they were, at this point, it looked like they were going to run away with that second spot in the conference. They trip up and fall teeth first into the ground against UCF. They come back and beat Houston to wrap up the season, and then they made it to a bowl game, which I feel like that's a win going from the conference. To make things quick, I'll give them a B. I'll give them a 34. A little bit lower than their standards. I mean, it's not the Scott Frost national title team by any means, but it was a tough ask to come into this conference, still with Oklahoma and Texas on the schedules. We're not on their schedule per se, but that's a tough jump. And I thought they handled it well, better than I think a team would on average.
Well, Brandon, one of the most electric moments of our very first show was finding out that, their head coach, Gus Malzahn, was also named Gustavos. And that was a special moment for both of us. I thought I know everything Gus Malzahn, and I didn't. And I'll never forget the name Gustavo when it comes to that man. I love your score. In fact, that's exactly going to be mine, is a 34. It wasn't easy at times. They had a couple letdown games, but they had some really nice wins too. They've got to be very pleased with where they're positioned. They're pretty much going to be a good spot for maybe those Florida kids that are overlooked by some of the bigger state schools. But there's no shame in going to that area. Orlando's a great town. Beautiful campus. I mean, I was there in the spring. I sent you photos. Brandon just walked right on out towards the 2 feet from the field. Snap photos. They're 2017 national champions, which just cracks me up so much that they have that just proudly displayed in their stadium. Love it. Great mural of all the mascots, the conference as well. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I love the energy they got down there. So I'm with you. I like their season they put together. I got 34 as well.
And then for men's basketball, I'll wait it a little bit. Again, coming to the best basketball conference in America, they had some good moments. They won a Big 12 tournament game. They did have an early exit in the NIT, but overall, a pretty average season from a non-basketball school going into the toughest conference. I'll give them a B-. I'll give them a 33 for that year.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of schools this year at home, they beat Kansas. So there you go.
Well, that's a common theme in some of these.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Maybe
we got to stop putting so much weight to that.
Yeah, maybe not as big of a deal this year, but still did it. I love Coach Johnny Dawkins. I think one of the funner basketball minds in the conference. One of the nicest guys you'll find in the conference as well. I wish they'd build their fan base a little bit more on the basketball side. Like when Iowa State played down there, I was blown away at how much Cardinal and gold there was. And granted, Iowa just wants to get out of the state in February, so maybe I just need to defend them a little bit. But they're in an interesting position. We'll get to that in a minute. But in terms of the season, not bad. But I'm also aware they didn't make an NCAA tournament. I don't want to overlook that. But they don't have as big of expectations historically compared to some of the other schools we've already mentioned just in this segment. I'm going to go 30. I'm just going to give them a straight C. Nothing wrong with it. I don't think anything wrong with their season, but are they happy with the status quo? I think it's going to be a question maybe we're asking come next March, say they have another season like that.
And then looking ahead for the Knights, I feel real good about where they're at. I love me some Arthur Gustavo Malzahn the third. I'll follow him into the sunset. That's for sure. Love him. And
Yeah.
then basketball. I don't think that they typically have high expectations, so I don't feel a whole lot of pressure there. I'll give them a good 17 here. I feel real good about the direction that they're in, and being the only team in their conference in the state of Florida. I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's could be a unique advantage there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think football, I like where they're at. Really like where they're at. I think there's a lot of excitement, energy, etc., and just things that they're going to put together. So, yeah, if they can build upon that, I think that's great. Basketball, I do have a little more concerns, admittingly. If they're looking to build a force in the Big 12, that's going to be a tough freaking hill to climb. And what is going to be, and those I think are conversations they've already had, will continue to have. What kind of winning do they expect? Are they okay being in the below end of the Big 12 if that means maybe they make a tournament here and there? Maybe they win a tournament game or two. It's a lot of fun, but if they're a more serious player, they're going to have to continue to invest and boost that program, and that remains to be seen. I'm going to go 15. I'm going to go 15 because I think basketball, I do have some concerns. But football, I'm with you. You and I, how about that? Two of us going to just fly into the sun just for a moron out of Arkansas and Arthur Gustavo Malzahn. So, yeah, 15 is going to be my score.
I love it. So a lot of average, a couple of schools slightly above average, and then Cincinnati pretty well below average. I think that's generous. But let's see here. So just to wrap up, TCU ended up with a 73, good for a C. West Virginia, 75, good for a C. Cincinnati is 67 for a D again. I think that's pretty generous of us. So good on us for not picking on Cincinnati too harsh. Then a B for Houston, a B minus for UCF. I have a feeling in our final iteration where we're doing the Big 8 schools, there's going to be a little bit more B, A's, thrown in the mix. Not one school that's gotten in that A criteria.
We're tough. We're like the Russian judges at the Olympics, Brandon. We are just brutal. We could be unfair, but I like our scores so far. And again, like if you all disagree, let us know. Like we definitely want to know. We're not saying we're the most. There are many fan bases out there, Brandon. If there's one thing you and I know about sports fans, there's some sick people that know like just the most intricate detail, every nook and cranny covered when it comes to their fandom of their school. And maybe when it comes to Iowa State, I can cover a lot of those nooks and crannies, admittingly, but all these other fans, I can't. So let us know if we're missing something. We would love to know, but I like our scores so far, Brandon.
I think so too. And that's all that I had. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yes, Brandon, one final thought. I talked to 6 Oklahoma fans this last week regarding our segment last week regarding Lincoln Riley. And all 6 told me they never want to see that man ever touch their state again.
That's crazy.
Just telling you. I told you last week that Norman takes things personally. They are nuts.
You're right.
Just saying. So that's it. That's all I've got.